Hello everybody, it's Delilah and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one I'm excited about. I haven't done a video like this before, but we found ourselves in a unique circumstance this week. I've been gone all weekend. Zach's been home with the boys, and very unexpectedly Zach and I are going to be traveling a couple of days later this week. So we're only gonna be home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. And because I was gone this weekend, we don't have much in the fridge already. But I also didn't really wanna go grocery shopping and do a lot of meal planning because we're not gonna be home a whole lot this week. And I realized I actually have quite a lot of random stuff in our freezer and in our cold storage. And I figured if I just got a little bit creative, I could easily come up with meals to feed our family for the entire week based solely on what we already have. So the goal this week is to not go to the grocery store at all, but instead to shop our freezer and to shop our cold storage in our pantry and come up with meals to feed our family for the entire week. I will say we do get local milk and cream and eggs every week. We are still getting that, but in a smaller amount, but we are not going to the grocery store. It's gonna be a little bit of a challenge for me this week, but I'm excited about it because this is actually the way that I grew up cooking. We save money buying in bulk, but then we also have extra stuff on hand for situations like this week when it just doesn't really even make sense to go grocery shopping, and instead we can just use what we have. I'm really excited about this. I have not looked in my fridge. I haven't looked in my freezers. I have no idea what I've got. I haven't planned at all. Like, I have nothing prepared. So we're gonna see what I can come up with, but why don't I just take you into my fridge and freezer area and show you what that looks like. Let's start with the upstairs fridge and freezer area. There's really not a whole lot in here right now, and I think this is going to be the biggest challenge because we don't have a lot of fruits and vegetables right now. We've got some beets, some peppers, some carrots, some spinach and dill, and other than that, that's pretty much it. But our freezer is overflowing with a bunch of random stuff. We have ice. We have Annabeth's food prep that we're still digging out of. Underneath here, this is where I usually keep breads and stuff, but right now we are out. We ate all of that this morning, and we just have like some frozen onion skins for broth. I have things like frozen breadcrumbs and frozen bread chunks and a little bit of frozen fruit in here. I froze some cottage cheese when I made it last week. We have some frozen veggies like frozen tomatoes. I freeze stuff before they go bad so that they don't go bad, and then I can use them later, but then I forget to use them later. So that is the goal for this video, is to use all this random stuff that I've saved and set aside. Of course, we have our pantry, which isn't very exciting, just regular pantry goods. We are very blessed to have 2 deep freezes, and currently they are full of stuff. So right now this is our dedicated meat deep freeze, and we have it chock full right now. We actually just purchased a quarter of a cow and half a pig and participated in the whole butchering process. Well, not for the cow, we did for the pig. But anyway, we've got a freezer full of meat, so meat is certainly not an issue right now. We've got plenty of pork, plenty of traditional Mennonite farmer sausage and roasts and steaks, and meat is not going to be an issue here. In addition to this freezer, we also have this freezer. This is an upright deep freeze in our cold storage area. This one's very unorganized at the moment. We have an overflow of meat that did not fit in the meat freezer. I actually have some stuff I need to throw away down there. I have a whole bin of bone broth and veggie broth that I've made. We've got containers of like frozen cookies. We've got jams and butter, granola, some freezer meals, and some fruit, some buns. We've also got some frozen veggies over there that I might have to dig into. So aside from freezer stuff, we also have like this cold storage area downstairs where we store bulk items. We've got like oils and peanut butters and canned goods. We've got some baking goods like flaxseed, chocolate chips, cocoa powder. I've got some flour down there that I actually need to start putting into my big bins that I just bought. We've got rice and some tomato sauce that I bought for when I'm in a pinch. Some pastas. We have a random bag of carrots because I accidentally bought too many. So that's food that we've got in our house. Now, this morning for breakfast, we ended up basically just cleaning out the fridge and the leftover pancakes and waffles and bread that had just been sitting in the freezer for a long time. Lunch is just around the corner. I don't have anything planned. Probably be something to do with the cheese and the sandwich meat that is in the fridge right now. I actually do have one loaf of bread left, so maybe we'll make some sandwiches for lunch. But I do need to start thinking about dinner as well, because if we're gonna have meat, I gotta pull that out of the freezer and get it thawing. So I'm going to just take a minute to think about that, and I'll get back to you. Before I could make any big decisions, I had to first focus on lunch. And I had a loaf of bread that I had pulled up from the freezer early that morning. And we had leftover meat and cheese from a birthday the previous week, so I wanted to use that up. I decided to make some sandwiches. Now I try to make about 90% of our condiments and a lot of our food from scratch. And that includes mayo, which is really nice in situations like this because I can whip up a batch of mayo in no time. With ingredients that we already naturally have on hand. This isn't just any regular mayo though, this is a lacto-fermented mayo, and I can leave a link to the recipe below, although I have tweaked it over the last year or two that I've been making this. But what this means is I add some whey from my yogurt that I make every week to my mayo, about 2 tablespoons. It does not affect the taste at all, but it does start that fermentation process. So you could use liquid from sauerkraut or something like that, any fermented liquid. After I make the mayo, I just let it sit on the counter for like 6 hours overnight with the lid just slightly open. This gets the fermentation process started, and it allows my mayo to last so much longer in the fridge before going bad. But it doesn't affect the taste at all. It tastes exactly the same, it just lasts longer. Lunch today was just a simple ham, cheese, pickle sandwich, but it's one of the kids' favorites. And because most of the ingredients are homemade, it makes it all the better. I was trying to use up some of those carrots, trying to use up some dill and some yogurt that I had left over. I decided to make some veggie dip to go with the carrots. So we had carrots and dip on the side. I don't have a recipe for my veggie dip, but the base always includes half mayo, half yogurt, salt, pepper, some sort of sweetness, either honey or sugar is what I usually do, and then some sort of acidity, so either lemon juice or some vinegar, and then herbs of choice to flavor it up. Today for flavors, I just did some fresh dill, I did some chives, and just kept it really simple. After lunch was done, I ran downstairs to grab out some meat from the meat freezer to thaw for the week. I pulled out some sausage and some steak and got that in the fridge to thaw. And then I took a look through the fridge freezer to figure out what else I could pull from there to use up this week. In here I had so many random bags of tomatoes and peppers and onions, so I pulled those out. I also threw out a couple of things. I thawed a couple of things for future meals. I also found some graham cracker crumbs and stuff like that. I also took this opportunity to clean out the freezer because it was time that happened. So for meal number 1, this is what I pulled out of the freezer and the fridge. A bunch of random bags of tomatoes, peppers, onions. I had some peppers in the fridge to use up and some onions to use up. So we're making freezer tomato sauce is what I'm gonna call it. It's basically just a tomato sauce. I hid some red peppers in there as well. My family isn't a huge fan of red peppers, and so I have to be strategic about how I cook them so that they don't really taste them. So I'm adding them into a sauce. So this is like a roasted veggie sauce, roasted tomato red pepper sauce. Basically, I just dumped a lot of frozen veggies and fresh veggies on a pan, seasoned it with olive oil, salt, and pepper, and I threw those into the oven at 450 until they were charred. Meanwhile, in a pot, I got some onion sauteing and some butter. Then we'll come back to that in a minute. While that was cooking, I got started on my pizza dough because tonight we were having pizza. I was also experimenting with fresh milled grains for this, so I did half all-purpose, half fresh milled, so that we were still getting some of the nutrients from the fresh milled flour, but the fluffiness from the all-purpose. This isn't a sourdough recipe. I needed something quicker than that, so this is just a yeast recipe, but it's my go-to and it's really good. This day, I really just wanted to use up the rest of the sandwich meat that was in the fridge, and pizza is an awesome way to do that. Once the veggies were roasted and charred on the outside, I pulled them out and put them into that pot that I was sauteing onions in, and I continued to let that cook and simmer until everything was softened. While I was in the kitchen, I thought, you know what, this is a good opportunity to also make some granola bars because we had no snacks. Our stock was very low, and I also found some homemade graham cracker crumbs in the freezer that I thought would be perfect for this. I've been wanting to try like a s'mores granola bar recipe. So that's what we were doing here. I had some marshmallows in the pantry. So I just made the base granola bar recipe. Then I added some graham cracker crumbs and layered some marshmallows and chocolate chips on top. Coming back to the veggie sauce, now that everything was soft and cooked through, I added everything into a blender and then I poured it through a strainer to get rid of any seeds or skin from the tomatoes. This isn't a necessary step, but I personally prefer my sauce to be more smooth, and so do my kids. Then I seasoned it with some salt, pepper, I think I did oregano and some sugar, and our sauce was ready to go. And that was it for the sauce. Now the pizza dough was ready to go, so I started getting the pizzas assembled. This recipe makes 2 pizzas, which is the perfect amount for us to have for supper and then also have leftovers with. So we had 2 very simple pizzas. The first one was ham and cheese with that homemade sauce that we had just made. The second one was like a chicken ranch type of pizza. I used the rest of the veggie dip that I had made previously because it was kind of like a ranch. And I found some frozen shredded chicken in my upstairs freezer, so I added that and some cheese. And that was an awesome way to just get rid of a lot of those random leftovers in the upstairs freezer. We love smoked pizzas, so Zach got those on the smoker, and while those were cooking, our granola bars were cooled down enough that I could pull them out and cut them up and wrap them. When I first started making granola bars, I thought it was very unnecessary to go to the extra step of actually wrapping them in parchment paper, but then I realized how nice that extra layer of parchment paper is when we're out and about and I'm bringing these granola bars with me. It prevents a lot of sticky hands and a lot of mess, so I do go that extra length to wrap them up. The pizza was 10 out of 10. It was really good and it was a huge hit with the family. Alright, day 2. Today was a bread making day. I make a sourdough sandwich loaf on a regular basis, once or twice a week. But as I was trying to make it, I realized we didn't have milk. Today was milk day. We were gonna get our milk today, but I didn't have it then, and I needed it right at that moment. And so I had to get a little bit creative. We had just a little bit of half and half cream left in the fridge. So instead of doing milk, I did half cream and half water to make a milk-like substitute. Honestly, you could probably do this with water as well, but the bread might not be as moist in the end. Again, I've been practicing with the fresh milled grains. So here I'm using a hard red wheat. From what I understand, hard wheat is better for yeast doughs like bread because it has a higher protein content and it just works better in doughs like that. Once I got my bread going, I started working on breakfast, which this morning was farmer sausage, scrambled eggs, and toast. So I got my farmer sausage on the pan to start cooking, and while that was cooking, I got started on supper. So for supper, we were gonna do skewers. I had these beef cutlets in the freezer that I needed to use, and so I chopped them up and I got them seasoned. I think I did some garlic powder, onion powder, oregano, parsley, basil, salt, pepper. Then for liquids, I added some lemon juice and olive oil and got those mostly covered. I gave it a good mix and let it sit in the fridge for the rest of the day just so that I could get a good marinade and soak up a lot of that flavor for supper that evening. Zach's family has a tradition of butchering pigs every spring and making their own Mennonite farmer sausage. And it is the best tradition because this farmer sausage is something that you can't just buy in stores. I mean, around here you can buy sausage like this in stores, but it doesn't taste the same. This is real, authentic, good stuff, and it is a staple in our home. So in the same pan that I cook the farmer sausage in, I'm also doing the scrambled eggs in. This gives them that extra flavor because of all the browned leftover bits from the sausage left in the pan. I had just a little bit of bread left over from the loaf that we had used yesterday, so that was a perfect way to use all of that stuff up. And because we didn't have any buns or bread or anything like that in the freezer, I knew I needed to make something. And so my usual go-to is a sourdough sandwich loaf, just because it's very versatile, my family loves it, and we can use it for a lot of different things. Lunch today was just some leftover pizza from the night before, so I didn't film that. So we're moving on to supper. We're doing skewers, and that's not something that I do very often, but I thought this was the perfect way to use up that last bit of onion and red pepper that I had in the fridge. And it was. They turned out really well. So I assembled the skewers and Zach put them on the barbecue. Meanwhile, I cooked some rice. I just did plain butter rice, nothing fancy. Then I also made a salad. Again, I'm doing a homemade dressing. So I just did some olive oil, white wine vinegar, mustard, honey, salt, pepper, and then I tasted it and added whatever else I needed to add. In this case, I needed to add a lot more honey to make it taste just right. So we had some spinach that I needed to use up, so I made a spinach salad with that dressing. And then I raided my pantry and my fridge to find any other toppings I could put in here. So we had some toasted pecans and some dried cranberries, and I had some feta in the fridge, and this turned out really well. This isn't something I make on a regular basis, but it really hit the spot, and Zach said that I should definitely make that more often. Meanwhile, we got our milk and cream, which was great because then we were stocked up for the rest of the week. I find that a lot of our meals, especially in summertime, consist of some kind of grilled or smoked meat, some kind of a carby side, and then some kind of a veggie, either a salad or a cooked veggie. Today it was grilled skewers on rice with spinach salad. Alright, moving on to day 3. I was starting to feel like this was a really lame video because honestly, this wasn't very challenging for me because we do have so much food in storage. This wasn't very hard. And so I feel a little bit lame about even sharing this video, but I hope it gives you some inspiration nonetheless. I had freshly baked bread from the day before, so we had that for breakfast the next morning, and this breakfast was just a classic simple breakfast of toast and cereal and yogurt. Just really quick, simple things that I can just throw on the table and everyone can have what they want to have. We also had some leftover sausage from the day before, so this was kind of just like a clean out the fridge kind of breakfast. I make our granola at home. I make yogurt at home every week. I make bread on a regular weekly basis. I make homemade jam, and so this meal, while very simple, is elevated so much more because all of the components are homemade. Again, for lunch we just had leftovers, so it's not very interesting to share. I did not film that. And so we're moving on to supper. Today's meal, again, is outside of the box for me. I did some experimenting this week and it received a very positive feedback. So today I was making a roasted warm potato salad, and this turned out really well. So I cubed some potatoes and I seasoned them with olive oil, paprika, a little bit of onion powder and garlic powder, and I got those into the oven to roast. I am now realizing that I didn't actually film the veggie for this meal, and the veggie this time was carrots. I did just basic steamed carrot. I know that's kind of boring, but there is just something about a steamed vegetable with a little butter and a little salt that is so good. So now for the warm potato salad, once the potatoes were roasted, I added some mayo, salt, pepper, a little bit of mustard, some fresh chopped dill. I also did some chives and some lemon juice as the dressing for this, and the flavors just complemented each other really well. While I was working on these side dishes, Zach was outside smoking some steak. Steak is such a treat for us, but it's also something that's really easy to cook. It's really quick to cook. And so this meal was just really easy to put together, but also really, really delicious. And that's everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this gave you some inspiration and some ideas of how you can use what's in your own freezer and in your own pantry. Yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.